Well, we're going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. Is it good or is it bad? Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host Rich Gear here as well, and Doug, I got some thoughts. I know you do too. You actually used some of this AI stuff, and it's getting more and more prevalent today.
Well, I think that it's like anything else. It can be used for good or for bad, and some of the information that we have about artificial intelligence. I remember we have an article on our website called "Artificial Intelligence and the Creator." The author was Daniel Graves, and he wrote that in 1998. And so a lot of these things still apply what he is talking about. And there's a challenge with the artificial intelligence to determine whether it's going to be work for us or work against us. And I think that is really a good tool to use in many cases. I have an example of that. This week I took the notes I took for the show that we did on Summitville, Michigan, at the ghost town, and I asked the co-pilot in Microsoft Word to fill in some of the details. And what I found was that it gave a some summaries of information that I didn't know, pulled it from the internet and some historical records. And so a lot of it came, I think one of them came from Ancestry or death records or something like that. So here's what it wrote. To appreciate why Summitville could flourish for a short time, then fade almost completely away, it helps to place it in the wider story of northern central Michigan, the 19th century. After the Erie Canal opened in 1825, people and goods flowed more easily from New England and upstate New York to the Great Lakes region. Michigan became a state in 1837, and within a generation, the state's pine belt drew investors, mill operators, and laborers who followed the timber, first to the big rivers and later to wherever the rail lines could reach. Then one of the things that we had a mystery about that I was didn't know anything about, but knew from the gravestone that we found of Edwin Randall, which was the subject of this of all the artwork and the poetry that was found in the ledger that we had.
Mhm.
It showed that on his gravestone that he passed away at 18 years old. And when I plugged that in, when the AI edited the document, it plugged in the information about that. It was a, accidental discharge of a firearm. And so then it also connected Edwin Randall to my grandmother's cousin, Minnie Randall. And Minnie Randall was the wife of Elmer Thompson, who had the house in Lewiston that we used as a vacation spot years ago.
Right.
So it helped to connect the dots, and it helped me a lot in a number of ways to do things. Now, I had a conversation earlier this morning with a friend that I have a Bible study with, early morning prayer, and we discussed a little bit about artificial intelligence and how he forbids his students at Calvin College to use it, and he can recognize when a student uses artificial intelligence to write their paper.
How
And
does he tell? How does he tell? Did he give you that information or what?
well, he's gotten he knows what the assignment is supposed to be, and what how artificial intelligence actually writes stuff.
Yeah, I
And he
know.
uses some verbiage and where he could recognize that this didn't come from this guy, it came from the AI. And so he downgrades anyone who uses it because it doesn't contain original research or documentation. Now,
Mhm.
I think if I were to be a student nowadays and I wanted to use AI to help me write something, I would take what the AI pulls out of the internet and use the references, but I would rewrite it in my own words
Right.
to make it mine. And
See, the problem is the AI, sometimes it just sounds so fluid and good. It writes it from
mm,
from people shared with me. I have not really used AI at all. And it's not because I'm trying to be a Luddite, and a primitive,
mm,
but there are some caveats you and I talked about before the show started that I've always thought about. Every tool you use that makes things a little easier sometimes can degrade or minimize or mitigate some of the humanity involved in producing the product, even though the product may become slicker, better looking, more efficient. And those are things you have to decide whether that's worth the trade-off. I
mm,
went into that, as I said earlier, I talked about this years ago when I recognized every tool that I used as an artist began to change how you made things look better. But you divorced yourself a little bit more from the human who produced it. The most direct kind of oil painting, for instance, or if you will, painting would be finger painting. Okay, all right, but you're not going to get the slickest image. You're going to get kind of rough, kind of a rough thing. So you use regular brushes, and I mentioned how you brushes, and then later on you end up with air brushes, which even makes it look even cooler, or photography. In the early days, Doug, photography and portrait photography, the same person who actually painted him who took photographic portraits because it was really an art trying to get that photographic thing to work as well. And then eventually, of course, it divided, and there are photographers and then painters. But you come up with now, then you got computer graphics now. Photoshop. I use Photoshop, but every tool makes it a little easier to produce a product. Sometimes not always easier, but the product usually is very nice and it's reproducible very fast. And so you have to decide what is the trade-off worth what you're producing. And a lot of people think it is, and I think in most cases it probably is. And AI is the next step in one of those things, but it'll write your papers, it'll produce your own artwork you
mm.
know. But you get to the point where it reminds me of Doug. It's when I see enough Pixar cartoons. Those are all done by computer. It's all Pixar. It's like they look kind of the same. And the
Yeah.
AI has a certain look. You talked about your professor that was able to downgrade it because he recognized the AI, not original. And I think that's the thing about it. I looked at you and I talked about this, and I'll bring this up again if it seems germane for the show is like our ability to memorize is getting stunted. I mean, and it has been for generations and for hundreds of years in some respects. Look, whenever you come up with printed material, you don't have to have oral tradition. And then when you do certain things, certain things take the place of it. The modern phone, for instance, I asked you earlier, how many phone numbers do you remember? And almost I ask anybody that question, they go, I don't know. I think I maybe know mine, maybe if I'm lucky, because I have to put that down sometimes. But that's the point of it is and that's not necessarily a bad thing because useless peripheral things that you don't have to waste your time memorizing a lot of stuff that isn't going to help you along. But the ability to memorize is what I'm talking about. The ability to create something out of your own original thinking, your own original writing, your own original artwork, your own original thought process gets somewhat mitigated. That's the caveat, the only caveat really, I would say, because every aspect of improvement to make things a little easier can somehow, sometimes a little bit mitigate the humanity involved in creating that product. And I'm not so sure that's a good thing in its full extent of it. I'm not afraid of a lot of Hollywood movies, Doug, from the Foreman Project all the way down to the Terminator things, when the machines take over and the computer takes over. And I talked about earlier, there was an old TV show called The Agent of Shield, and there was I think it was the black guy, and he goes, and they get sucked into this artificial intelligent world. This might have been 5, 10 years ago. The show was on Agent of Shield, but anyway, and he comes out with his line, says, "I've seen all the movies. Artificial intelligence never turns out well for the humans." You know what I mean? We're not to that point yet, but it's still a little bit, it makes me think a little bit, because you don't want to become a Luddite, those people who broke all the spinning wheels in England because they didn't like the technology of the hand weavers being done away with. Every technological thing makes life a little easier, but also eliminates a lot of productive employment. And I'm saying, okay, what are we going to replace it with? Human beings are, I say we may live in a digital world, but we are analog people. Okay, we still God made us a certain way, and we need to produce, create, think, and make things happen by our own initiative, our own endeavors. And so those are the things I think about when I think about all the stuff that and all the benefits, quite frankly, that AI can do. I've not really availed myself of it yet. People, a lot of time, I got my friend Tom. He says, "Oh, Chat GBT, man, it's really great. It can get all kinds of stuff." And you talked about Copilot, and it will do. And what I like the idea is that it can fill in stuff that you didn't know, like the Summitville thing. That was pretty incredible. That's really good stuff. But you mentioned like you take what it might write and you'd write it in your own. But a lot of people are not going to do that, and
My
that's
daughter had a program called Mid Journey, and she was showing it to me when I visited her in Arizona a while back. And I gave her the poem that was written by Edwin Randall about "Come sit by my side in the twilight, oh girl with the violet eyes, and come
yeah,
build, let us build a airy castle." And I plugged that into the Mid Journey thing, and it drew a beautiful picture of a girl, and then and standing with her flowing dress next to the castle. And then I just, for fun, I said, "Mother-in-law pickle pie."
oh yeah, that was disgusting, Doug. You
That's pretty disgusting, but
That's pretty disgusting. Oh
but anyway, like I was talking about, I go back to my days being a engineering and chemistry student, and it was just at the same time that were coming out. But I
yes,
remember we were lining up to a room where they had a whole bunch of these big calculators that were desktop sized, and
yeah.
we would come into that room and line up to use them, but they would not allow us to use the calculators during the tests because they wanted us to work everything out by hand.
Hmm.
And if you know anything about calculus and a lot of different things, working out square roots by hand is kind of a involved process. It's actually
Yes, it is.
a binary process where you sort of zero in on the decimal points.
But
And
again,
so
Doug,
I,
that goes to the point. He doesn't want your ability to think for yourself solutions to problems. And I think that's where it comes into. I don't think it was a fear of people using calculator because obviously those things are going to help. Well, Doug, you ran into the same thing. Didn't you say the professor could recognize AI writing? A guy,
yes,
yeah, talk about
I
that.
had a conversation with a fellow this morning about that, and he says that he was able to tell on the papers that were turned into him whether they were using AI to compose them. He would grade them down as a result because it was something that was not original, but he would just it would be a something the computer would write. And this is something this article that I have on my website talked about. there's a test called the Turing test. Now, you may have heard of Alan Turing,
Alan Turing, yeah.
and he was. It says, "But how would we know the machine's intelligence rivaled the human?" The computer genius Alan Turing proposed a test. Modified, it's this: place a human and an AI behind partitions. Bring in an astute human observer, and typing on a keyboard which transmits to the electronic to the hidden subjects. The observer asks any questions he chooses, receives typed replies on his monitor. The AI is programmed to respond as slowly as a human. If the observer is unable to say, after a predetermined time, which answers originated from the AI, which is the human, the AI is shown to be as intelligent as the human. And
Hmm.
some of these tests have already been conducted.
Yeah.
But under some restrictive limits, AI has been sometimes been able to fool the human observers. But there's always something that you can tell if the machine is uh, editing. And in this case, the professor finds patterns that are consistent with what the AI is generating
Oh, okay.
versus what he knows of the personality of the guy who is actually doing the writing. And
Uh,
if he recognizes that some of the different ideas that he is presenting is not original, but it's coming from a machine, he downgrades them and tells them you need to rewrite this but in one case he said I'm going to give you a chance, but you're going to have to rewrite this without the AI and turn it in, or you won't get a grade.
okay.
And so that's interesting thing. I would want to be able to talk about how to fool the professor by doing the research using AI, but rewriting it in your own words.
Sure.
And so there is that part of it. One of the things that artificial intelligence doesn't understand is jokes and
Oh, really?
illogical stuff. And like I told them this morning, what I'm going to do is type into the AI Wildcat in the Outhouse by Claude Butts.
But yeah, you used that line to me at someone, was it your grandma's funeral or something? I can't
Yeah,
remember where it was. Man,
that
I'm trying
wasn't
not to,
appropriate, was
it
it?
was not appropriate. And I'm trying not to laugh. I'm busting out laughing, trying to kind of, oh, I can't believe you said that right. Right. It was, and you did it on the QT, man. That was so funny. So
Yeah,
the AI would not understand that?
yeah. Sometimes something that's illogical or has a lot of emotional significance to it is something that the AI doesn't translate very well. And
Okay.
And so it's sort of like uh, Data in Star Trek, you know. Eventually he got his emotion chip, and then he
Yeah.
went crazy and with his emotions, and finally he sort of settled down. But it was kind of an interesting observation of what someone's imagination of what AI can do
I know.
in the robotics. Uh, we Now the question is, do we need to fear AI? That's a good question. I think we need to ponder. Is it something that's actually going to take over and be a problem
Well,
for us
well,
eventually?
Doug, I think that's a broad question because I did give you a caveat. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
The thing that I worry about, if there's anything to worry about, is not its efficiency, its ability to help us produce and make things easier. It's if we start to lose too much of our humanity and our ability to be original. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's
Yeah.
one thing to program a bunch of data in. You know, researchers have been doing that for a long time, and let's face it, they use pre-existing research and they regurgitate it out and put it in their own words. But somebody has to come up with original stuff. That's
Oh,
the only thing I really worry about is the ability to produce original things. I don't think we're anywhere close to that at this point in time, so I'm not that worried about it. But on individual basis, I've watched myself kind of get dumbed down by the use of the cell phone and the computer. I've gotten lazy on some things. I don't know that that's always a bad thing, but for instance, Doug, I go back to the art example. I don't ever want to go back to having to mix my own paints and stretch
mhm.
and try to stretch my own canvases and prime it with rabbit skin glue, all those old things that the old artists had to do. So if I lost some of my humanity because I don't do that, I don't think so, but that's where the line is, Doug. I don't know where that line is. That's a good question. But I'll tell you this, based on the topic of the content of our show, I don't think it doesn't really do anything to foster an answer to our creation evolution debate one way or the other. In other words, we're still going to be human. As I said, no matter how much digital stuff we get out there, we're still made in the image of God in a certain way, or you don't believe we are, but we have our brain is still a certain way. I know they keep talking about, well, let's make cyborgs and half computer, half human. That's still in the realms of science fiction. Some of it may become reality to some extent, but the idea is, when does our humanity, that image that's made in the image of God, get truncated to such an extent that we're no longer human anymore? I don't think we're anywhere close to that with AI. Okay. So I'm not worried about it as far as that go. I am worried a little bit about, because it can make some things easy, what jobs are going to, when the farms got replaced, we had all kinds of jobs in the industry. Now the industry gets replaced with computers. What do we have? I'm not saying there isn't something, but I don't know what it is. Do you see what I'm saying? And in the human nature, we need to work. The human being needs to work and produce his own original stuff. And whether it's just a work cleaning out latrines, or creating a masterpiece of a painting, or a work of literature, or whether it's a new business, human beings have that drive because we are made in the image of God, Doug. We are made in his image. And what is this? What do we call him? What's one of the names we call God? He's the creator. And
Right.
we imitate that creator all the time. And if we lose that because of AI or anything else, that's the only thing I worry about, the ability to produce new things, original things, human things. Okay.
Now, question
That's what I
along
look
those
at.
lines, Rich, is the project that you're doing for the Michigan History Center right now.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
would that be something that could have been 3D printed?
With a large enough, not with any printers that I know anywhere, but I mean Hollywood or some of these industrial machines, a CNC machine, maybe, I don't know, that those go back a long way. They're more mechanical than computer, but I think their interface more with computers now. It used to be more mechanical, but they produce large things. They've been able to produce like cars and things of that nature. So I'm not saying that at some point they could do it, you know.
Now, would that be something though you could give instructions to, say, make this log exhibit, but you have to have some input into it to get something
Yes.
out of it.
At this
And
point in time,
that's
you
the
still
whole
have to
thing is
say,
all
yeah.
the different information that is on the internet has been put there by somebody. And it's a collection of that information that is being mined uh, by the artificial intelligence to pull it together and to bring it out into a creative
And I think that, Doug,
stage.
is an interesting, maybe it's splitting hairs, but they call it artificial intelligence, but it's not able to really do original thinking. You know what I'm saying? As
Right.
far as it regurgitates I mean, it's got a database I don't even know how it supports such a huge database because it has everything in it. So anything that's been produced by humans at some point or whatever, or even by nature, it's in there, you know? And so that's why even this image of this violet-eyed girl or whatever is based on things that have been produced by somebody else to some extent. It's
Hmm.
made its own thing. But is it able to do its own original thinking process? That's where, in the past, the fear of the of the machines taking over, so to speak, because they become self-aware. And artificial intelligence, to my way of thinking, is
Mhm.
not anywhere close to that. It's not self-aware. It's not. It doesn't have a soul per se that the human being has. So in that case, it's not technically artificial. It is artificial intelligence in one sense, but it's not intelligence that you and I would define it, which is something original, instinctive, inside of you. It is programmed, I guess, because human beings are programming it, but it's human beings programming it. It's not like an outside, something was birthed and suddenly it happens. It's not able to self-replicate itself. It can't create other computers that can do what it can't do that. But maybe it could follow a formula to create another computer. I don't know because there are computer machines, so they can make cars with them. So who's to say they couldn't do it? But that they're self-aware, I don't know that that's even remotely possible.
Yeah, the self-driving cars I seen out in Arizona are
I still
kind of
don't trust them.
interesting. Yeah,
I
the
still don't trust them.
Waymo, they have these radars on top,
Yeah,
going all over the place, and you tell it where to go, and you still have to input that into it, and then, but they
yeah,
make them as taxi cabs,
that's true. Yeah.
and so it's kind of interesting to see that, but. I I just don't think that we are at a point where something will replace humans or being a cyborg like Data
Yeah,
in Star Trek. He played that pretty well, didn't he? He
did it
played it
very well.
without
Brent,
emotion. That was
is it Brent
interesting.
Spiner? Is that his name? I can't think of the actor's
Yeah.
name, but yeah.
So I think that artificial intelligence, in my mind, well, one of the experiences I had with it just recently was our last TV show where I turned on the AI feature of Zoom, and what couldn't distinguish was all the banter that we had in the beginning from the rest of the TV show.
Oh, is
You
that
know, it
right?
ended up with a
Interesting.
lot of garbage. And so I think that we have to understand that if you have the uh, right inputs, it'll narrow down the information. I
Yep.
I used it yesterday to create a document telling me what I needed to do to file my nonprofit status for to the IRS. When I went on the
Okay.
IRS website, I looked it up, and there is a document called 557, which is 78 pages long, fine print.
Oh my
And
God.
I said, screw that. I'm going to ask Copilot, see what it says about that. And what was nice was that it started prompting me for questions to tell me what I was eligible for, and if I was able to do the easy form or the long form. And
Okay.
so I started plugging in information to it, and it determined I was available for the easy form, and
Oh,
I
that's
should have
good.
no problem. And so it was a nice way to compile all of the information I needed to do to send to the
See,
IRS to
that's
get
why I
my
think
nonprofit status.
yeah, I think it can be, it's very useful. I mean, like I said, I have not really availed myself of it too much, at
Hmm.
all, really. I've had people tell me to do it, but I haven't really needed to. Maybe I could do it for this PowerPoint, Doug. I don't know, but, but it's too late
Yeah.
now for that. I'm just plugging in stuff and doing things, but, yeah, I see the value of it. Like I say, the only caveat I've had is ultimately do you lose a little more of your humanity or your ability to be human by using this so much? But that's always the fear with every new technological advancement. I have to admit that every time you have something new like this, there's going to be the old school that are going to be afraid of it because it's new. And I'm trying not to be that way about it, but those are the cautions you always have to have,
And you need computers, you need to have the technology, and that doesn't happen by itself. That was
That's
something that
true.
was created because we created it and God created us. And with
Yeah,
that, that ties it into our creation evolution question.
absolutely.
So we will see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution. We hope you enjoyed our journey into the world of artificial intelligence.